Our insider, TSN Hockey Insider, Darren Dreger, joins us here on the show. Hello, Dregs. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, no complaints.
Nice.
Short sleep. We had the regional game.
Right.
I wanted whoever was responsible for picking Toronto at Seattle last night fired because it was a 10 o'clock Eastern start.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, Toronto at Calgary, 9 o'clock. No problem with that. I mean, people are going to watch that, an all-Canadian matchup. But Toronto at Seattle, yeah, taking one for the team. But no, aside from being sleep deprived, all good, ready for the weekend.
See, that tells you how, I mean, that's, you've got that tough Saskatchewan in you. We piss and moan when it's an 8:30 start in Anaheim or something. It's like 8:30. What the hell are we talking about? Why do the griping since we've not had to get up to do morning radio has been a little bit easier to take.
Different. Sure.
We are ones, we are very soft.
You gotta leave that for Sportsnet. See, well, who does that? Because this is the thing out here where they're all the regional, everything's on Sportsnet. Out there, you get the TSN package, you get the Sportsnet package. I mean, that's a huge draft error right there.
Oh, I get it. And look, it could have been horse trading, right? You know, in some sort of competition with Sportsnet where they say, okay, we'll give you that Calgary game on Tuesday, but in order to get the Calgary game, you've got to take that Thursday Seattle. With all due respect to the Kraken, it's just
that's right.
I don't know. I mean, you guys know. I mean, Eastern Canada stirs the NHL drink. So how many poor Toronto Maple Leafs fans would have stayed up until 1 a.m. to watch the conclusion of that one?
God, that's late. Yeah.
Not great.
At 3-1, you probably head to pillow. And that was what, second period?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for a good chunk of it, you're thinking, okay, well, maybe Anthony Stolarz can hold on to the shutout. What a story that would be, coming back, first game since December 12th, I think. But beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot of intrigue in that one. But, you know, the break is right around the corner, right? Games tonight, games tomorrow. Weirdly, and I'm not going to drive the conversation this way, but weirdly, there's 2 games on Sunday before the Four Nations break. And
on
one
Super
of them
Bowl
includes,
on Super Bowl Sunday.
Well,
before this break.
Yeah, I should look at the times. It could be afternoon games for all I know here. Hold on.
Either way, I didn't mean to derail you there.
No, I guess the point is, yeah, they're both afternoon games. So you've got Utah at Washington and the Lightning taking on the Canadians in Montreal at 1 o'clock Eastern. Well, Washington has no players involved in the Four Nations, so they don't give a rat's you-know-what about the NHL schedule. They're just booking holidays. They're good for the break. So we're waiting now on Sidney Crosby. So the news sounds more progressive, and Canada is encouraged because he was a participant in full practice today. So they're encouraged. That's the word. They're not going to make the call. It doesn't sound like they're going to make that call until they have to on Monday, give them the weekend to work through. But let's say for S and giggles here that Mark Scheifele would be the guy who would replace Sidney Crosby if Sid can't go. Scheifele, I was told he's got a trip booked and he's leaving tomorrow, Saturday.
Yeah.
And he wants to play for his country, obviously. So he's got to wait now until the conclusion of those Sunday games and probably until Monday afternoon until they make the full declaration. So he's supposed to go somewhere warm and sunny. Is he going to get a game of golf in on Sunday, waiting for those games? I mean, Hagel, I don't know if Sorelli's going to play. He didn't play last night. Hagel, Sorelli, and Braden Point are the 3 Tampa Bay players playing Sunday afternoon. So it's just weird that the NHL would have those 2 games scheduled on Super Bowl Sunday when you know you're going into the break. I mean, as condensed as the schedule is, they couldn't squeeze 2 games in, you know, somewhere. At some point. I don't know. The whole
It's the same thing for Mackenzie Weegar, Dregs. They're going to replace Pietrangelo. They said, oh, we'll make that announcement Monday. And it's like, well, Weegs is going to be on a PJ Saturday night or Sunday morning going to the tropics, I'm guessing. Like that, you're putting these guys in a tough spot because they do want to probably, you know, that's not a guy that's had a ton of opportunities to play for his country. He was a captain
and wants
of the World
to,
Championships
obviously.
and loved it. Yeah. He's a guy that you don't worry about the fatigue of that whole thing. But you also, you know, you understand that he's got family, he's got plans, he's probably got tens of thousands of dollars spent already.
Sure. Yeah. It's a bit of a weird one. It is. And I'm a bit surprised that the Players Association, there's got to be an easy explanation for it, but the PA, you know, wants to make sure all the creature comforts are there from a player's perspective. Clearly that's a part of what they do. So to have this one kind of fall through the cracks like that is a bit weird. It's a bit strange.
I'm not saying it because
I'll say what Rhett won't say. He doesn't think the players give a rat's ass, and I definitely
about the Four Nations.
That. Yeah, but I also watched highlights of the '96 World Cup today, and that again.
When was that?
'96, the '96 World Cup.
Thanks, dickhead. What time of year?
I think it was the fall, if I remember, which I agree is better time.
August.
Big difference.
But
Big difference. You're getting ready for the
war
year. You're not beat the shit by the season.
And we hadn't seen the Olympics at that point, right? This was the first. Like, what was the time?
Yeah, you're right. It was the 2 years before the Olympics.
Yeah, it had been years and years, like Rendezvous '87 or whatever the hell it was.
It was in prime time. It wasn't at 2 a.m. in Nagano. Like it was unreal, and that's what they're trying to build, fellas. That they want that back, and they're not starting with it. I know, and I don't like the time of year. I know, but that is what they are trying to build. A tournament that when you watch the highlights, which I have today later,
from experience. You're speaking from fandom, which is great, and they want to build it, and this and that. And the world was different in '96, and it was different in '86 and '7 and '72. Yeah. All that is irrelevant. I'm speaking from sitting in the dressing room, looking at the schedule, going, "Holy F."
Yeah.
I'd rather have the time off than do this.
Yeah.
And I'm not everyone. I'm not
I agree with
Captain
that. September's
Canada.
way better.
I'm not like I'm a different, but there has to be guys saying the right thing. Yeah, I want to, and in the back of their heads going, Mexico's real nice right now. Real good.
And then
the whole team going, everyone's hanging out.
How about the flip side of the event too, right? Like we're focused on, okay, it's a break for the majority of NHL players. For the fortunate group, they're going to say the right things. They want to play for their country and all that. So the Florida Panthers, what do they have? 7 or 8 participants in the Four Nations. So there's a reasonable chance that several of their players are going to go to the end of this event, right? So now they've got 2 days between the end of the Four Nations and playing their next regular season game. So if we're willing to give the event the benefit of the doubt and expect that, okay, Canada, US, it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a physical battle out there. And I don't know, maybe that's expecting too much because, again, we want to make historical references to how great the international level of play can be.
It's not too much. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, go ahead.
The individual, your competition, once you're in that game, you're going for broke. So they will compete their asses off. Once you're there doing it, you don't want to look across at those guys and hear an anthem or see no. Once you're there, you're all in. I believe that fully.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess. Think about the number of games of the Florida Panthers, and this isn't a woe is me for the Florida Panthers. They're happy. Paul Maurice is not complaining even a little bit. I mean, I might complain on behalf of Paul Maurice how is he not involved with Team Canada in any capacity? I mean, all they do is win in Florida, and he's had a pretty good run as a head coach. But it's just there's so much at stake here. There's so much. You think of the games that the Florida Panthers have played in the last 2-3 years?
Yeah, final, and now this. Yeah,
bonkers. But again, this is how athletes can be programmed, right? The schedule has been condensed for the last number of years, so they're now used to it, where you get maybe 2-3 practices a month. That's what they're used to now. So going into this event, playing at a high level, coming back, maybe having 1 day off, light skate, then maybe you take the optional or a morning skate, and then you're playing a game. Yeah, nobody's worried about it. Nobody's worried about it.
If you are the Florida Panthers or another team, do you give those guys longer? And can you? And then it comes back to, well, what about the fans that are paying for those tickets?
Agreed.
The NBA and the whatever the hell they call
and winning the division, Rhett, right? Like they're in a dogfight with the Leafs and who knows? There's still plenty of hockey left. I'm looking forward to the Four Nations. I am, but I'm almost looking forward to it as much of being unsure as to what we're going to see and what we can expect. It frustrates me that it's not best on best. It can't be when you don't have Leon Draisaitl or David Pastrnak or some of the great players, including the Russians, involved. I understand current events and the state of the world and why Russia won't be allowed back in, at least from a double IHF perspective, for another year. The IOC may have something different to say about that with the Olympics looming, but it just seems more like a forced event on everybody. But if that's the case and we're entertained by it as a fan, then the end result is what they're after, and that's generating more revenue. That's what it's all about.
I hope the hockey's good, because the rest you can fix. You can move it to another time of year. You can add more teams. You can put it in different cities. You can price the tickets differently. You can do everything different as long as the hockey's good. If the hockey's no good, it's big problems for the PA and the NHL trying to grow this thing.
Yeah. We know what the cap projections are for the next 3 years, so they must be fairly confident that the revenues are going to continue to climb and climb and climb.
I've been trying to think of an analogy or a comparison from a movie or something where you take an old athlete and you whip him back into shape to come and try and save the day, because that's where we're at with Warner. We're filling him full of steroids and getting him on the treadmill because we need him back on the Flames blue line, because last night there was at least half of it that's AHL caliber stuff. We got Jake Bean, we got Joel Hanley, we got Danil Miramanov. It's a fucking mess, Dregs, and it's coming. And depending on which side you're on, for some fans, Flames have lost 5 of 7. They've played top teams and have not looked good against them. They lost to the Wings, who, in fairness, since Boxing Day, have had one of the best records, if not the best record in the league.
7 in a row, best record in the league since Flames taken over. Winnipeg,
Washington, Toronto, Colorado have all either come through or hosted the Flames and really had a good time doing it.
Yeah.
And it's been hard to watch. And Conroy makes the trade last week for players, and I know there's some fans that are frightened to death that he's going to do it again to get some help on the blue line. They need help on the blue line, but it's that mucky middle that they're in again. And I guess I'm just curious. I'm curious what Conroy is going to do here. There is no trade freeze, right, over the 4 nations?
No restrictions. I mean, there might be like you're not going to upstage the National Hockey League in a spectacle event by loading up with another blockbuster. But we did see the Ottawa Senators in Game 7 last year trade for Linus Ullmark, right? So anything is possible. It all depends on when you're able to execute. I don't honestly, Dean, I don't hear a ton around the Calgary Flames looking for defense, but they have to be, right? I mean, anytime you ask the general managers, they'll say the same thing. We're adding pieces on depth, front, on the back end, all that. It is curious, though, that they make that deal with Philadelphia, and there's a defenseman there in Ristolainen who I'm reasonably convinced he's going to get traded. It's going to be a good chunk. Just simply based on he's got a little bit of term left in his deal. But I wonder if he was part of even a bigger conversation, or if it was simply moving the deck chairs in the way that they did with Farabee and Morgan Frost coming in. And I like those guys. We talked about this last week. I like those players, but acquiring good quality defense, unless you're the Vancouver Canucks, it's a bit of a challenge.
I think meanwhile 5-1-1 guys in their last 7. Like they're winning a different way. It's 3-0 over the Avs. They're 2-1 in overtime. Like they're going to get comfy winning low scoring games. It looks like under Tocchet.
Yeah. And I mean, they've got Thatcher Demko going now too, right?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. But we don't have to do a deep dive on the Vancouver Canucks blue line. But when you look at it as a whole, that's an impressive group. And they might be good on that back end for a while, considering some of the pieces that they've got coming, including Victor Mancini, who they acquired from the New York Rangers, who's touted as being a really, really good defenseman. So that's fine by Tocchet. Don't forget Adam Foote, Gonchar, all those guys with influence in the decisions of Tocchet and how that team plays. You darn right. They're going to lean on their goaltender, but they're going to have structure in their game. And they have to, because, the reality is they still have the same issue. Like, Elias Pettersson isn't doing anything more than he did prior to JT Miller getting traded. And that's a problem. And that's again, why the Vancouver Canucks don't have a choice but to try and land another decent center. So there are more assets that are going to leave Vancouver moving forward.
Yeah, what I saw this morning, 1 assist in four games or something for Pettersson here this week. So that hasn't changed. It's funny, you look at the Rangers have been better with Miller since the trade, and the Canucks have been better without him. Like, you guys could, and the Rangers have stunk before Christmas. You guys could have done this in November and probably just saved both of yourselves a whole lot of headache.
Well, and I'll tell you this, Vancouver would say they were happy to do this in December anyway. Yeah. But Chris Drury didn't want to have to give up both the first round pick, which they used in the Pittsburgh deal, and Victor Mancini. He was willing to part with one of those, but not both. And they finally caved, being the New York Rangers, and they made the deal that they could have made several weeks ago.
Yeah.
What is Pettersson out there though? Like, is the jury out for a guy making, how much is he making? 11 and a half? And we don't know what he is? How's what?
Yeah. That truly is the enigma that Elias Pettersson is. They believe he's coming into his prime, still a young-ish player. They believe he can be 100+ point guy again. Not based on what we're seeing, but that's what they believe when they look at the talent level. Guys, this. It's so difficult to get stronger in season as a player. If you don't put in the work in the off season, and really all you're doing is maintaining, aren't you, Rhett, throughout the course of the year? Like, you're trying to stay healthy.
Yeah, everyone's got a different build. Some guys are trying to maintain weight. Some guys are trying not to put on weight because there's food all around, right? But it's the same thing. You're just trying to maintain one way or the other.
And the knock on Petey is that he's just physically not strong, and has no lower body strength. Just simple body positioning, battling for pucks. He gets pushed out of the play a fair bit. So he's relying on his hockey IQ, his vision, and his hands. And if the will to compete isn't there, and you haven't necessarily put in that strengthening work in the off season, it's going to come and bite you. And it kind of feels like that's where Pettersson is.
I'd be calling up Kyle Connors, nutritionist, and whoever's, is it squats? What are we doing, Kyle? Because
he's wiry, man.
There's nothing to him, and he's a tough son of a bitch to play against. And can he score?
Yeah. Well, and there's an intestinal fortitude there too, right? A fire that burns in the belly. And then look, let's give Pettersson the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it'll come in time. But his time in Vancouver, again, has to be running out. Maybe it doesn't happen between now and the deadline because of everything they've done already. But I still think they're open to clean the slate. They want to give him time. But, how much time? We've got the deadline looming, March 7th. But does it drift into the summer? We'll have to see.
Short month away, right? A couple days less than Feb. Like, we're into 28 days of the deadline or something like that.
Interesting. I know that everybody's buddy Paul Bissonnette, Biz, taking some heat for criticizing Connor Bedard on the broadcast. I guess it was last night. And I'm not looking to jump on, but I was doing some stuff here in my little room, and I had the game on and was watching. It's like you've got a rookie head coach who's, feels very rookie-ish, right?
Mid-season rookie.
He just doesn't have yet the feel of an NHL head coach, and a first overall pick who's got a world of skill. But I'm kind of on Team Biz on this one. And not to say it's not going to turn around, but right now it's just kind of, you can see that they're expecting to lose. He's just out there playing the game, turning the puck over, not making smart plays.
Yeah.
It will work itself out, but I don't feel it will with that coach. It just doesn't feel, you feel like it'd be intimidating. I would guess when you're a new coach, what are you going to do? Start ripping the face of the franchise? Awkward spot for him to be in.
No. And look, I can't appreciate Connor Bedard swinging back. Right. There's no one that's above criticism in pro sport. And that includes, some of the best. And it's still, unclear as to whether Bedard is ever going to be in that category. We know at this age, he's not that. He's not that. He's got a lot more work to do. And it wasn't that long ago, Mark Messier, Hall of Famer, called him out for a play that he made or something that had happened. And so, to go after Bissonnette in the fashion that he did, I can understand and appreciate it based on his level of frustration. And he's tired of being, to a degree, a media punching bag. But Bissonnette's job on that panel is to call it as he sees it. He's not just comedic relief, right? He's not the clown on the panel. This guy played in the National Hockey League, and so he knows what he's talking about. And if that's what he sees, then that's what he's paid to deliver. So Connor's going to have to get used to it, because if his skin is that thin, there's a lot more coming from, heavier, kind of analysts and whatnot than Paul Bissonnette, because Paul Bissonnette, as he's proven time and time again, is more player friendly, no matter the caliber of player than not.
See, I put this on the organization a ton. Who have they given him to play with? Right now he's playing with Ryan Donato, who's been a fourth liner and on waivers for like a half decade. And Landon Slaggert, who's played less than 25 games in his life. Those are the guys they've given.
I agree, man.
And it's like, oh, well, Nick Foligno's here. It's like, great. So you can watch a guy that 7 years ago was a really good player and he's tough and he's a good leader. Okay. But like, who's he actually going to play with? Like, name the best guy he can play with. And then they fired the coach that they raved about when it was like, it wasn't going. So like, what did you expect with this roster?
And a good coach too. Like Luke was a respected coach.
About and talked about how great he was. And then quick hook there. Like, why does Chicago think they were going to be good? Look at the roster.
And running out of assets too, right? Like, at what point, the Seth Jones rumors are going to continue to percolate, right? There's a good chance he gets traded. I wouldn't have him top 10, I don't think, on a trade bait graphic because of that contract. But, if you're trading these pieces out, you got to get something that matters back, right? Like, so they're involved in that trade that ends up having Rantanen go to the Colorado Avalanche. And I heard somewhere that Chicago didn't even know who they were retaining on.
Yeah.
Which is ludicrous.
Just knew the dollar amount.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what? You're not going to Puckpedia and calling it. Here's 50% of a salary that I'm retaining on an unrestricted free agent pending. Like, who is it?
Yeah.
Come on. Like, what are we talking about here? And then you trade Taylor Hall for nothing. And again, we can debate whether or not Taylor Hall has any game left. To throw him in at that point for a third-round pick coming back or whatever it turned out to be, that's just not asset management to me. It isn't. I'm sorry. It just isn't, because you get closer to the trade deadline. How do you know? Maybe Taylor has a good run. Maybe somebody has an unexpected injury. I don't know. But we've seen some players that you thought were out of gas all of a sudden get a second-round pick in return on deadline day because, player A, B, C, D aren't available, so I guess I better grab E because I need a winger to help me out. It's bizarre what's going on and what's been allowed to go on in Chicago.
Rhett, do guys in the room care what? I mean, obviously care, but do they focus on what the return is? Because I'm thinking, if I'm in the Hawks room, be like, well, there goes Taylor Hall, and what would we get back? Not a player. That's a terrible deal. So we lose a guy and the deal makes no sense. I just feel like that'd be salt in the wound, or do guys even give it crap?
Well, I'm trying to imagine being in that room where the season's over again, and it's kind of, I think that you'd be like, ugh, that wasn't, I think the comment would be the same as we're making. You probably could have done better, but it's probably not changing the outlook on the players, right?
No.
Like, there's no hope in that room right now. You're grinding through.
Well,
I'll drop this in, even though I know our chat it comes alive. Oh, when's Oiler talk? But I am curious. There's a little break here. Vegas has, whatever you want to call it, they've come back to earth, hit the skids. The Oilers are now tops in the Pacific and have looked good. And I'm curious what will they do come deadline time? It's still very much win now mode. Vegas and a lot of places have them as the odds-on favorite to be a champion. What will the work be for the Oilers here heading into the deadline?
Dabbling is the way it sounds right now. And, I think they need like a third, fourth line split penalty kill forward. Again, I'm sure the coaches are putting together their wish list, and then they submit that to Stan Bowman, and he goes, well, we can't afford that. So let's, go down the list here. And they'd like to bolster their blue line. I mean, they bring in Klingberg, and I think that he's been a good ad, worst case, okay, with the expectation being that he'll get better. But I think that if the right piece is available, they'll get in there. There's been some speculation around their goaltending, and I think that's fair of any top contending team, though, right? If you don't have a legit game-breaking goalie, and there aren't that many that do, and teams recently have won Stanley Cups without that, you're always asking yourself, okay, either one of our goalies, in this case Skinner and Pickard, capable of stealing a game in the Stanley Cup final? And if the answer to that all year long has been no, well, then you have to have conversations with general managers about other possibilities. Is there, aside from John Gibson in Anaheim, who else is available that's going to move the needle for Edmonton? Or it's better than Stu Skinner. And I think that that's probably why goaltending isn't top of mind for Stan Bowman, and it's more on defense and that penalty kill forward.
Are they? It sounds like Nurse has had a really nice bounce back season, because he was almost unplayable in the playoffs last year. They had to separate him and Ceci, or it was over. Like Broberg was so huge in that they could keep both those guys playing. Is Ty Emberson really a top 4 guy? Has he been good there with him, or is it Klingberg playing there? Like, I still see 3 top 4 defensemen when I look at that roster. You probably want 4 if it's your last year of cheap Draisaitl.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the hope is, and you're kind of selling that hope when you bring in John Klingberg, is that reality is he's not going to be a top 4 guy, but he can help you on the power play. What if he is a top 4? What if he plays better? What if this hip resurfacing, he's had so many hip surgeries, but this is the latest one, right? It's the Patty Kane procedure. What if he says he feels great. So if that's true, and he can continue to, work in his game and elevate his play, and he slides into that top 4, man, that is terrific, because that takes some of the heat off. But I'm with you. When I look at that team, I see the same thing. But they're also running a bit low on assets, frankly, in that organization. And that's where you go back to losing Broberg and Holloway, right? And you had made the McLeod deal. You lose those 2 guys in the fashion that they did to the offer sheets to the St. Louis Blues. And it takes depth out of your organization, but also takes 2 tradable assets out of your holsters. So everybody has something to work with, but I don't think Edmonton's going to be big game hunting. And when I think of top 4 available D, you have to have the assets where you're taking a piece out of your roster that you can't afford to. And I don't think Edmonton can afford to do that either.
So just looking here, 1:00 Eastern. Got time for a little afternoon purr there, Dregs? Kind of shut the mill for about 45, hour 15.
No.
Boys, I got about a 15-pound loin on the smoker right now.
Wow.
That's what I got. And
they didn't have the big ones?
Huh?
They didn't have the big ones?
Yeah. It's like, I can't even, like, the screen isn't wide enough for how big this chunk of pork is. And it was one of those, I'm not going to brag, but I go to the butcher and they didn't have any on display, and now I'm panicking. It's Super Bowl weekend here. I'm like, well, I got to find one. Like, do you have anything in the back? And he comes out with this slab, and he goes, I'll just cut a chunk off that, unless you want me to weigh it up and see. I'm like, no. And he goes, it could be expensive. I'm like, it's pork. How expensive can it be? So anyway,
Super Bowl.
Yeah. As we started, it was coming in at about 134, I think, temperature wise. So you pull it at 145. So it's probably right there now. So that's what I got going, man.
Very nice.
Let it cool. It's got to rest. Let it cool. And then you thinly shave and sandwiches for Super
Are you like
Bowl.
Kramer? Have you got the meat slicer going in the kitchen?
No, but I got a big ass knife that's like a razor blade. That thing will cut through anything. Yeah.
I expect pictures, Dregs. If I can't taste it, I want to see it. So well done. And who you got in the game Sunday? Chiefs?
Eagles. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the history and all of that, and chances are I'm going to be wrong. I get that. And I do like the antics of Andy Reid. I do, and I respect Mahomes and all the pieces. I just feel like it's time for change, and there's enough going on. And I'm not a Bills fan, but I'm surrounded by them here.
Yeah.
And I to a degree I share their misery and I can see Rhett there. Yeah. So you guys have been tortured enough. You can't have Kansas City come through and win another one. So go Eagles.
All right, fella.
Go Birds.
Enjoy it. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, boys, have a good one. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Hey, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And, of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.